We're back again for episode 64 of Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash with returning guest Lily Forrester. But before we jump into that, let me tell you about a special offer we have for you from friend of the show, author and content creator Shane Radliff of Liberty Under Attack Publications. You can take 10% off your order by using coupon code DANK10 at libertyunderattack.com. That's DANK10. They have books focusing on self-liberation, freedom strategies, solutions, and more. Current books include #Agora, Second Realm book on strategy, Ben Stone's Sedition, Subversion, and Sabotage, and Shane's very own Vanu, a strategy for self-liberation. They also offer assistance to new authors throughout the publishing process, including editing, proofreading, format for Kindle and paperback, and full-service audiobook productions. And speaking of audiobooks from Liberty Under Attack, yours truly is reading Vanu 2, so stay tuned for that. Liberty Under Attack Publications. Share your story. Find your freedom. Also, shout out Bad Moon Hemp. Check out badmoonhemp.wordpress.com. It's your one-stop shop for all your handmade hemp needs. I use their beard oil and beard balm. It's amazing. Get there today. It's Sunday. It's the 22nd. It's right before Christmas. You still got time to order from them. Hopefully, if not, it might get there a little late, but it's worth it. Great gifts, great products. One more shout out to friend of the show and former guest Shane Hunter, aka the Abrasive Entrepreneur. Get yourself over to abrasiveads.com and opt in for a free first training from the man himself on Maslow's hierarchy of needs tied into marketing. This is valuable stuff that you can't go without if you're looking to market your content. That's abrasiveads.com. Now enjoy another wonderful conversation with Lily Forrester.
Enemy of the state.
An enemy of the state.
Enemy of the state.
Dank Pod-Stash.
You're listening to Enemy of the State's Dank Pod-Stash. Check out thedankpodstash.com to find every episode of the Dank Pod-Stash, links to support the show via our BitBacker and Patreon, Dank Pod-Stash merchandise, and much more. If you'd like to advertise on the Dank Pod-Stash, email us at dankpodstash@gmail.com. Back again with Lily Forrester. It's good to see you back on the Dank Pod-Stash with your beautiful undreaded hair that we just talked about at length before recording. That's my bad. We're going to talk about it again. How's it going?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Life's good. Life's good. Getting ready for Christmas. I've been doing the Mexican thing this year, and I mean, in Mexico, most people don't realize this, but Christmas is a whole month, starting from the 1st to like the 12th is like a bunch of parades, and then like from like the 12th to Christmas is these things called posadas, which is, if you could imagine like trick-or-treating for all ages, but with Mexican food on a nightly basis for weeks on end. Like that's, so you just like go to this one street and you wait until people put food out, and then you run from house to house and you pick up tamales and punch and sometimes ice cream, stuff like that. Eat it and go home, and you pay nothing.
That's awesome. That's definitely one of the things I miss about living near the Mexican border is Mexican food, tamales around Christmas, all that stuff. Just the partying. They know how to party.
Well, yeah, everything's a celebration here. Like when they're not working, they're celebrating, from what I can tell.
Yeah, nice.
And sometimes they're doing both at the same time.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. So it sounds like it's been good, been fun since the last time we spoke.
Yeah, life has gotten a lot more fun. It's like I've been getting, still finding avenues for work. I'm finally getting to a point where like that's just going to be easy all the time. I've been creating a lot of shit for Anarchapulco.
Nice.
I've been moving around. I've found a place that I like quite a bit, and it's basically just been a matter of living my life and trying to find ways to make it better / make it so it doesn't stop, because I am trying to get my legal situation handled so that way I don't have to worry about deportation ever, because life's pretty good at this point. surprisingly, it's been now like 10 months since the murder, and things are surprisingly okay, whereas I expected life to still be really hard at this point.
Well, you're continuously moving forward with everything, it seems, and that's got to help, putting your mind on something and trying to improve. And I think I read one of your posts that said you had quit smoking weed at least for a while.
Yeah, it was an experiment because I had talked to friends like, oh yeah, I can quit weed whenever I want. I have quit weed, but like, and I was talking more about like physical withdrawals, but I never. It occurred to me like a week or two into brushing my dreadlocks out that I had never voluntarily taken a break from weed, and I was already kind of starting to run out of dabs anyway, so I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna give it a try. And it was like several days of me being just irritated with everything. And I didn't realize how much I was using it to manage my emotions. And that irritated me more because I was like, I'm at a point in my life where I fucking hate being dependent on things. So
Sure.
being dependent on weed for emotional stability was, it was motivating and annoying. I was just like, well, fuck this. So I just kept with it. And then that post was motivated by Tony Bones. She posted like, oh, I have a confession. I haven't smoked weed in a month and I feel great. And it like occurred to me and I was like, yeah, I guess I feel great too. Like I feel way better than I expected. Like I have pretty much no weed cravings. Like a couple weeks ago, my friend who knows I'm almost out of dabs is like, I'll mail you some. And I was like, no, I'll just wait. I'll probably smoke again around the new year, but I'm not, like, my dependence for it is completely broken. I'm not going to be the type of person that has to smoke from when I get up until when I go to bed like I used to be. And it's pretty freeing. It's unexpectedly freeing. Like, I was so attached to the whole, like, I'm a cannabis activist. I'm on the run because of weed. I might as well smoke. But in some ways, it wasn't even as enjoyable because it wasn't something I did because I wanted to do. It was something I did because I felt like I needed to or else. And then I didn't know the alternative because I had chalked up my pissed off feelings at the other times of quitting smoking weed to be like, because before this, the only times I've quit weed for any length of time was involuntary. I either didn't have money, the murder, or I got arrested. And all three of those times I was pissed off for different reasons. So I didn't realize the mental hold, I guess, that I was allowing myself to have with it.
Sure.
And I lost all taste for that sort of shit. Like I'm over the dependency on certain things just because I'd rather be a stable person without any of it and just have those things to enhance my life. And I'm all about voluntary relationships. Well, I didn't really have a voluntary relationship with weed. It was something I had to have or else.
Yeah. Would you say the effort to feel right without smoking weed was a conscious effort at first, or were you moving past it despite still smoking?
I mean, in some ways it was a conscious effort in some ways, and in other ways it was just like it was easier than I expected to move past it because like I was getting more irritable and I was noticing that I was more irritable, but I was also like noticing, that if I got over it, I would stop having those feelings. So it was surprisingly easy. And then like, I don't know, like 3 to 5 days in, I was just like, okay, I'm fine now. Like,
good.
I don't need it. And it's been like that. It's been almost 6 weeks since I've smoked anything. And I mean, I expected it to be worse. I expected it to be more annoying. I expected to have more pain, but like my anxiety levels are actually lower because I have more cash because I didn't buy a bunch of weed. And I don't have to deal with the cartel system now. Like the weed that I will be smoking, my friends will be getting for me. So I'll be totally detached from that whole system completely, which is
good thing.
That's an anxiety reducer right there.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. I'm glad I did it, and I kind of like recommend that anybody that's dependent on anything for their personal happiness, be it weed, be it a person, whatever, like give taking a break a try because you might be surprised on what you find.
Yeah, absolutely.
I certainly.
I haven't smoked heavily, really hardly at all in years. I remember when I was, though, coming out of that was just, it was like seeing the world in a whole new light. More so for me was quitting drinking alcohol heavily. It was like I was a new person. It's like I was the person before I started drinking heavily for years. It's just a total monkey off your back. It's really interesting the way how things look differently
In
and how
some
you
ways,
feel.
I experienced that too. I experienced that too a little bit because like I thought I needed it to be productive and to be more creative, but I've been like more highly productive, making more money. Like I've been producing crochet things like a mad woman, and I thought like I needed weed to be all of those things, but now I'm to the point to where like when I do smoke, it's going to be when I don't have productive things to do. I didn't realize it before, but like because I do like enjoy the feeling of being stoned, I would smoke with the intent of getting things done, and then I would like lay there on my phone for like an hour and a half just chilling, being stoned, which is fine, but like I wasn't getting nearly as much as I wanted to done, and now I just don't have any of that to deal with. So it's like I wake up, I do things, and I go to bed and start all over. And
How's
it's quite a
sleeping been
difference.
since quitting? Has it affected how you sleep?
That has been the hardest like adjustment, was because I was using it to sleep more, and my dreams became way more vivid, way more crazy. And they're still, I mean, my dreams are honestly still pretty crazy, but I'm adjusting, and I am feeling a little bit more rested. I am sleeping more technically, but I've also been doing experiments with carbs, so
Mm.
I kind of blame the sleeping more on the carbs experiments than I do on quitting weed. But yeah, my dreams were way more vivid. Some of them were more scary. Like it was kind of because like my dream world is where all of the unconscious shit comes up, and like I have dreams of running from police and all of that on a regular basis, and those became more frequent and a little more intense. But it was just kind of, in some ways, those have inspired me to focus on getting my legal situation handled more, whereas I was kind of ignoring that before. I was just like, well, fuck it, I've been on the run illegal for 4 years now, whatever. And then I quit weed, and now I kind of have a certain unrest with it, but I'm dealing with it. So
Right.
it's kind of making me face the things that I'm uncomfortable about with my life, and that's kind of what I needed.
Sure. Yeah. Working through stuff. Can you talk about what kind of legal stuff you have to take care of? Like what kind of stuff are you facing if you don't, I guess?
Well, I have 5 felonies, all related to have like possession of certain like cannabis related things. Hold on, there's a door opening and closing. That's a loud door.
Sure.
Anyway, so yeah, John and I both got charged with the same 5 felonies, and it was just shit we had in our car that we were moving from Ohio to Michigan, and we got pulled. Well, we didn't even get pulled over. We just got apprehended by police, searched, and they found all of it.
Right.
Then we just left the country, so I'm sure there are probably some pending charges for the fact that we ran. And basically my main concern isn't necessarily them coming after me for it. It's the fact that I'm an illegal in Mexico, and they've partially due to Trump, they've been a little bit more strict on foreigners being here illegally. I mean, I do know one friend that a couple of years ago got deported from Mexico, and ever since that's kind of been in the back of my mind. And more recently, I'm just concerned about it because, well, I like my life. I don't want to be deported. Here comes Renegade.
What's up, Renegade?
Yeah, he's cute as usual. And I just don't want to disappear. So my focus is I want to make it so I can just stay in Mexico indefinitely. And that basically I think is going to take hiring a lawyer, getting my charges in Ohio dropped, and then just finding a way to either bribe my way to a Mexican visa or just leave quietly and come back to Mexico and get a visa when I come in like everybody else does. I just want to be undeportable.
Right.
I know like if I were to get deported and sent back to Ohio, they'd probably drop the charges or reduce them, or I could, just blame it all on John and get the charges dropped with the right lawyer. But then I have to wait for Mexico to give me permission to come back. And that took Kurt David Robinson 2.5 years. And I am not interested in waiting that long.
No.
So.
Especially if it's calm where you're at and safe, and with things heating up in the U.S. as far as boogaloo stuff. I don't know how much of that ripples down towards Mexico. I've found a few articles talking about destabilization of Mexico and declaring drug cartels foreign terrorist organizations. But has any of that rippled down there?
Okay. I mean, there has, in some ways, like, Mexico changed governments, basically. Like, after this last election, they elected this guy that they call AMLO. Like, his name's longer than that. Those are just his initials. And since then, violence all over Mexico has picked up because he's taking a hugs not guns approach to the cartel thing, which is basically ignoring it altogether. Which, the idea sounds good, but it in practice has been disastrous. Like, you know, John, like, months before he died, when the new mayor got into office, was like, who knows what we're going to think of Mexico over the next couple of years. And now there's this push for a one cartel system in all of Mexico. So there's been a lot of unnecessary cartel violence. Like, even where I'm at, when I moved here, they're like, oh, we never have violence here. It's not really a thing. Like, you know, there are cartels here, but you can recognize them and avoid them, and they don't really cause any trouble. Whereas I was living here for like a month, and at like 4 a.m, there was like an all-out war down the road from me for like over an hour with heavy machine guns and automatic weapons and fucking grenades and all sorts of shit, because this national cartel is trying to sweep across the nation and take control with the support of the federal government. That's how they're getting all these ammunitions,
right?
Which technically means from the support of the United States government.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to take control. They're just clearing out all of these smaller cartels, which are actually pretty peaceful. And, like, you know, people expect living in a cartel system, like, it's violent all the time, but no, the violence only comes when one cartel goes against another cartel. That's why Acapulco is so violent. It's because there's no cartel that has control of Aca. There's 12 cartels fighting for control of Acapulco because it's paradise and they all want it.
Right.
And that's why it is the shit show that it is. Whereas most places have like one cartel. Some of them are the national cartel, and other places just have small local cartels that, you know, they do their business, but there aren't people like getting just killed randomly and stuff. And even this gunfight, like, the one thing I can say about that was at 4 a.m. there were no children out, there were no innocent bystanders. The only people that are going to be out and involved in that sort of thing were the people that were.
Right.
And so nobody innocent got involved with it. It was planned well, in my opinion, but still, it was a bunch of violence. People died, you know.
Yeah.
It was pretty stupid.
So they're trying to consolidate cartel hold throughout Mexico, right? That's pretty much what they're going for.
They think, like, they have it in their minds that if they can't get rid of the cartel, that just having control of all of Mexico is somehow better. They're also doing the same thing with the political parties. Like, there's a new political party in Mexico that's gained popularity and is now, like, gaining total control, called the Morena Party. That's AMLO's party. That's the lady that has control over Acapulco right now. And it's like, all it's brought, from what I can tell, is trouble. Like, it hasn't helped anybody. The situation's not better.
Right. It seems like if they were able to centralize cartel control, that it would just end up being a coup against the government. Like, it's pretty much two governments in place at that point.
Yeah, and at this point, there's like a lot of like people that are kind of planning a coup against the government in general, just because they're like, well, we liked how it was before.
Yeah.
And now this new government comes in and changes everything. And, you know, it's a lot harder now for everything from, that was something that I faced difficulty with, was the lawyer that I had for getting essentially myself out of trouble with all the murder and getting them to leave me alone for that. He had all sorts of connections, could have probably gotten me citizenship in Mexico before, but because of the new government, he had no connections.
Right.
So, like, the corrupt system isn't as efficient as it was just because of the change in government, because they got in the office and they threw everybody out and put new people in. But now everything is functioning at a much slower rate. Like, even my friend who legally went out the route to get his Mexican citizenship, it took way longer than it was supposed to, just because they're so inefficient, and the people that were doing was doing all that work just isn't now.
Right.
And it's like,
well, yeah, it's destabilizing. It's the state being destabilized, and some of the stuff I texted you that I wanted to talk about today was with Trump's classification or plans to classify the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And we know that the U.S. is in the business of destabilizing and taking over in one way or another. And it seems like things could be moving that way, especially with word of the gigantic lithium deposits. But as I was looking that up, it seems like that's kind of old news. So that might just be internet hype.
yeah, I mean, it is kind of concerning in some ways, because the things have changed a lot since Trump has become president, and in terms of like hostility towards Mexico, and especially this new government change, like, there is a chance that he turns it into an Iraq or an Afghanistan, and that's a little bit scary to consider because, I live here.
Right. And it doesn't sound like Mexican leaders want that. They don't want U.S. involvement, but that hasn't stopped U.S. from involving themselves in the past in other places either.
Yeah, and the U.S. has way more firepower than the Mexican government has. The firepower the Mexican government has come from the United States for the most part. So it's kind of one of those things where I think that's a big part of why they're like, there's a lot of people that are trying to plan a coup of the current government in Mexico to try to put things how they were, because, well, things were a little less violent before and a little less, but the last year and a half with this AMLO guy has been a different situation, and there's been a lot more unrest, and there's been a lot more cartel violence. And it's just like, above the scenes, he seems to do the whole, like, hugs not guns thing, but behind the scenes, like, they're funding, this certain cartel to go and take themselves national and do it by force. And it's like, I kind of hope they do the coup and that they're successful and they just go back to, good old corrupt Mexico, because I think it'll be less of a target at that point.
Sure.
Like,
yeah, more black and gray markets thriving. With people turning a blind eye, it seems like, less so going after them. Excuse me. Yeah, it seems like pretty much, I don't know about the whole world, but a whole lot of the world is very unsatisfied with the way their governments are working. I just read today about massive protests in India now. Rachel Nielsen, who I haven't had on the show, but that runs DIY Anarchy along with me and some friends, put together a map. And I think I wrote an article on Boogaloo for the Counter Economist, which is going to be out pretty soon, that it's 27 plus countries that are experiencing massive civil unrest and rioting due to being unsatisfied with the way their government's working. I think things are accelerating very quickly in people's minds at the very least.
Yeah, that's the one thing is, like, Mexico is, they've always been pretty resistant to changes that they don't like, and it's, they're getting resistant to what's been going on. There are a lot of people, like, there are also, like, a lot of stupid things like feminist protests and stuff like that. Like, the feminists are all up in arms because of femicide, which is, the murder of women, but the only reason that women are getting murdered is because of the cartel system, which is because of the U.S., which is, and Mexico's compliance with the U.S. laws. So it's like, you guys are looking at the wrong enemy here.
That doesn't get out very much, that there's a lot of feminist protesting in Mexico. I hadn't heard about that till you told me right now. That is very interesting.
It's all over the country. There's, like, marches going on. But the annoying thing about it is they're like defacing public property to prove their point. So they're like storming cities and dressing like whores and painting their bodies like they do in the United States, but they're also like painting femicide and just like gibberish on buildings and monuments and stuff. And it's like, that is not going to get it to stop. If anything, it's going to inflame it more because y'all are acting like children.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so they're laying the blame pretty much solely at the feet of the cartels. Then it sounds like.
No, I'm putting the blame there. They're putting the blame on men. It's anybody male. There's a big, like, surprisingly big feminist movement here. It's something I've talked to my boyfriend a lot about because, like, he's like 6'5" and, you know, kind of intimidating presence, but he's like the total opposite of what they would refer to as a misogynist. But he has been called a misogynist just because of the fact that he's a male and he's tall.
Sure.
And he's faced a lot of bullshit over it. So it's like, it is kind of surprising because, like, women, you know, he didn't date for 3 years because of feminists, because women in Mexico are either Catholic or they're feminist.
Oh, geez.
And when they're feminist, they're even worse than when they're Catholic because they, you know, they have it's pretty much the same as the feminists of the United States, only they feel like they have more ground to stand on because more women are killed here. But the only reason that there are any women being killed here is because of the cartel and the hold that they have on the country, which the cartel didn't exist before the drug war. There was no point to a cartel before the drug war.
Right.
And they would have never gotten into things like sex trafficking if they weren't already into drug trafficking.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I would never have expected that. Would you say that the feminist movement down there is larger than the feminist movement in the U.S.? Because it sounds pretty prevalent.
I would say so. It has more support. Like, everybody, like, even the men here, for the most part, like, the majority of he's lost male friends because he doesn't even, like, talk shit on women, but he is very vocal about feminism being a scam. And every time he does that, he loses a male friend that's sympathetic to feminists.
Wow.
Like, what's wrong with you? And it's just like, or they call him a stupid misogynist, and it's like, man, like, he shows me more respect than anybody, like, any male I've ever met, yet he is called a misogynist more than any male I've ever dated. Like, it's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the thing in the US, but, like, here, like, it's partially exaggerated by, like, the way family culture and stuff is set up. The men, they have their macho-ness, but they're also whipped by the women even more than they are in the United States. The women kind of, you know, they control the household.
Yeah. It sounds like any criticism that's being leveled at your boyfriend is just purely virtue signaling then at this point. It's pretty ridiculous. But I want to circle back. You were saying that you were experimenting with carbs. And that's interesting because I know you're a proponent of the carnivore diet, and it's worked well for you, and other people have followed your example, and it's working well for them. What's going on there?
So, like, I mean, the whole experimenting with carbs started with, like, I went only beef for 5 months, and the whole attempt was to try to get my skin clear, which it wasn't clearing. I realized now my skin wasn't clearing because I was stressed. Like, this has been the hardest year of my life. Like, of course I'm going to be stressed the fuck out. It doesn't matter what I eat. And my skin was almost clear. It just wasn't clear. It all started with a couple of bags of gummies, which are my kryptonite, you know. Like, they're mostly, you know, carnivore, but they still have sugar in them.
Sure.
And then before, though, when I would cheat on them, I'd have all sorts of symptoms. I'd wake up with leg cramps, you know, night sweats and all these other symptoms, and I just wasn't getting those same symptoms anymore. So it's like, okay, maybe things aren't as bad. Over Day of the Dead, I kind of started having a little bit of fruit here and there, and it was basically just a life is short, I should enjoy it sometimes. And I didn't have, like, the same digestive issues that I was having, but my chronic pain came back that came back, and like it was harder to keep my moods, and I want to sleep more and stuff like that. It's harder to get motivated. And it was basically like at that point I was just trying to see how I responded to things because it had been so long, and the whole theory behind the carnivore diet is you heal from it. So like I had so many people telling me that I was just like ignoring my symptoms because of the carnivore diet. So I was like, well, let me see if I've actually made some progress or if I'm, still the same sick person. What I found is I have made progress. My gut health is way better, like, and I am more able to handle those things, but I've also found that like I still prefer my quality of life without it. Then like a month ago, I like essentially had a financial scare where it was like 70% of my income was most likely not going to be there the next month, which that ended up getting worked out in a different way. So in a couple of days, but I was just like, fuck it. I'm going to try keto for a few short days. Well, keto-ish, because I wanted some fucking tacos. So, like, I just, I reintroduced some carbs, and it went better than expected in some ways, and in other ways I was like, all right, well, like, I learned I shouldn't eat cabbage in that, and that was just basically because cabbage gives me horrible gas, and I learned that, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been, and, like, usually when I would eat things that made me sick, it would make me sick for days on end, and I would also, like, I wouldn't be able to sleep because I'd be up all night nauseous, and feeling awful, and that just never happened. I was like, okay, well, let me try some other things, see how it is. Like, I can digest corn products and stuff, but like my body just runs better when I don't. And if I have too much, then I just have an instant several-day migraine that's just like, it goes away or it stays there until the carbs go away. And it's like, okay. So I still have some inflammation that I deal with, but like, I'm not quite as like sick as I used to be, from what I can tell. I also don't have quite the same diabetic and heart issues and Parkinson's issues that I used to have every time I would eat carbs. Like, that kind of chilled the hell out.
That's good.
This, like, yeah, most of this month, like, I've been going back to only eating meat, but, like, I live in Mexico. I mentioned that posada thing. I had a little bit of the tamales at that, like, which is mostly corn, but it's corn and animal fat. So if I'm really careful about what's in what I eat, I can, experiment with other things and not have the same sickness issues that I used to. But like, I realized that I still have some pretty severe sensitivities to things like yeast and vegetable oil because I tried some meat that was marinated in that. And then I had the same issue that I used to have. I woke up and I was nauseous all night, and I was like, okay. So yeah, there's still some things that I just fucking consider toxic and I won't eat under any circumstances. Vegetable oils, soy, and yeast, anything with yeast in it, I just won't fucking bother with.
Right.
But I can also, every once in a while enjoy life a little, which it's a little bit motivating because it was kind of depressing to come to the conclusion that I should eat only meat, and then for a while there I thought I should eat only beef, which it was all right at first, but like 5 months into only beef, I was just like, I just want to eat anything else. Like, I am bored. Around then I saw a tweet from Jordan Peterson, and it was basically like, how's the carnivore diet going? Great, but I'm tired of it. And I felt that hard because it was like, yes, I feel great, but like, man, I missed other foods. And I'm also a chef. Like, I fucking love to cook so much, and all I cook is meat, which I do a good job of it, but like, my boyfriend, we've been dating for like several months, and I just made him tacos the way I make it for the first time, and he looked at me like I was a sorceress or something because he's just like, I had no idea.
That's awesome. Well, it's got to be hard to stick to a strict diet with a bunch of free tacos and all that stuff around. Jeez, Mexican Christmas month. Holy shit.
Yeah, so I haven't been I've been strict-ish for the most part, but for the most part, like, I've also, and I'm glad, like, I have the memory of Fasada now, and it was such an interesting display, like, of community, because people everybody would just show up on these streets. People would come out of their houses with their little tables, set up what they're giving out, and then just give it out, you know. And it was just, it was really cool to see everybody doing that and to partake in it. Like, and you know, I had people just walking up and handing me food, like handing me tostadas, handing me cups of rice, and like some of it I just fed to my dog. Like I won't eat just anything, but like it was cool to be involved in all of that. And I almost didn't because I was trying to stay strict on the carnivore diet. And it's like, man, sometimes you have to live, but like I do think it's an incredibly valuable thing. I'll still eat mostly meat for the rest of my life, but I am going to enjoy life here and there, even if it means like a little bit of a skin breakout or a couple of headaches, because, well, life is short. And
yeah, absolutely. And I've seen your posts about the corn smut fungus, and I'm curious about how fungus affects how you feel when you're doing the carnivore diet. And that's something I also never got to try, which I still really want to.
Yeah, I think it's pronounced hudacoche or something like that. That's one of, like, I'm not that big into mushrooms, but that is one mushroom that I really fucking like. And I was like 2 weeks strict only, like, you know, 0 carb by that point. And I was just walking through this market. I had just bought some meat. I was going to make myself carnivore burgers. And I was walking through the market and I saw they had it fresh, like the freshest I'd ever seen it, because it's that time of year here. Sure. And I was just like, oh, I can't resist. So I spent 20 pesos and I bought some. And I can't say that I noticed anything bad. Like, I felt fine after eating it, but I ate a small amount of it.
Right.
It was surprisingly, and then I looked it up, like, it's mostly protein compared to corn itself. Like, it's shaped like corn and it does have a little bit of a corn flavor, but like, it's mostly protein. And that's one of those vegetables that now I know I can have, like, you know, a little bit with my meat and not have to worry about. And it's one of the only things I crave. Like, I don't miss salads. Like, I don't really, like, I kind of vaguely miss potatoes, but only in the form of pierogies. And like, nice. All the stuff that I used to eat, I don't really miss that much. Bread, I don't really miss. It was just like fruit and candy and occasionally like super random vegetables like that. Like the cabbage I really missed, and what I made with the cabbage was fucking awesome. But staying up all night bloated with gas was not.
No, hell no, it's not.
I was like, okay, that meal was technically keto, but it was not for me. Like, right. I can't do that.
Yeah, that's cool. I definitely got to try that.
I highly recommend that.
I love fungi in general. My wife is very into mycology, an amateur mycologist with questionable morals, we say. But it's just really cool stuff.
You can make that yourself just by growing corn, and then it's just like what happens when corn gets a little bit of soil in the ear when it's growing. Like, you can Google how to grow it on purpose, and you can buy it in cans too, and I don't recommend that. Like, if you're gonna try it fresh, but you can grow that, and it grows all over the US. Like, they call it corn smut, you know, it's a plague there, but like, yeah, I eventually will grow it. Like, I won't grow corn for eating, but I'll grow corn so I can essentially destroy it by making it moldy, because that stuff is just fantastic, like surprisingly fantastic.
Hell yeah.
I have Luis Fernando Mises for that, because I was grossed out by the idea of it, and he was like, no, try it. And it's been one of my favorite vegetable-like foods since.
Hell yeah, we might try that in the garden this year. That's a good idea. Yeah, so back around once again to Boogaloo stuff. Have you been keeping up on any of the happenings in Virginia or anything, or is that just so far away and not worth keeping up on?
That's pretty much like, I pay attention to what directly affects my life, and then the rest of it, like, I see the memes and I'm like, I wonder what's going on there, but not enough to like actually look into it. Yeah, I get real one track mind, especially the last month. Like, the last month, all I have been focused on, as sad as it is, has been yarn and crochet. Like, my boyfriend, I'll be sitting there scrolling on my phone. He's like, what are you reading? And I was like, crochet pattern, always. And he was like, really? And I just show him my phone. Yes, crochet pattern, always. I'm sure it's like one of my autistic tendencies, because like I just get focused on things and then I become obsessed, and that's all I can think about. So all I've thought about for the last month has been a mix of crochet and the fact that I'm going back to Acapulco, which it's like, am I going to make it there without seeing immigration? Are the cops going to recognize me? Am I going to be able to deal with the heat?
Yeah.
Things like that. It's all I focused on, which is kind of sad, but you know.
Well, yeah, it makes
It's been
sense because
interesting.
being out of country and it's, you know, you don't have it's not the same. There's a bunch of people riled up, of course, about Second Amendment stuff and having guns taken, and the atmosphere with that in Mexico is completely different than it is up here, I would imagine. I don't know, but I can't imagine that gun control is a huge thing.
Yeah, like where
I
live, yeah, like guns are illegal for the most part. Like most people aren't allowed to have guns. You are if you own a property, you're allowed to have like one gun that's unloaded. Like the gun laws are technically strict, but in terms of enforcement, no. Like that night, the night after that shootout that I mentioned, first off, all of those guys had guns. There were like 10 different kinds of guns at least that I heard. But like that night following, there were people all around me, and I think it was like almost the citizens show of force, like we have guns too, because like there were gunshots all over the place, but with parties, because it was like a Friday night or something like that. So you'd hear people cheering, and then you'd hear them shoot off their gun a couple of times. And yeah, I think that's a big part of why there isn't, you know, random violence here in the way that there is in the US. Is the violence seems random from afar, but all the violence that does occur is directly cartel related, and you know, it's stuff like that. Like most people here have guns to defend their home and their property and stuff. So they just don't think about it because, well, like even the day that we got shot up, you could tell that those boys that shot us up were looking around afraid to see if they were about to get shot back at. Like, because they didn't know, you know, they had guns and those were illegal. So what's to say we didn't have guns?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I hope in your travels back to Acapulco it's safe and you don't run into any agents of the state that are going to give you any trouble. But so what, you were invited to speak at Acapulco, or did you ask? How did that all go down?
They invited me to speak. Like I got some warning from my friend Kat. She was basically like, would you even consider it? And I was basically like, yeah, but I can't really afford to get back there. And she's like, well, they would pay for everything and you get a room at the Princess. And I'm like, I can't stay at the Princess because I'm afraid to stay at the Princess. You know, that was where Paul ran like his drug business out of, and we were seen there a lot with him. So I'm paranoid to even be there, let alone stay there. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to sleep if I stay there.
Sure.
So they're giving me money to stay somewhere else, and I'm not telling them where I'm staying. And yeah, they basically invited me to speak and gave me a main stage speech, and I'm going to be speaking on the health and wellness about the carnivore diet too. And it took me a while to determine if I even wanted to do it, because my boyfriend was even like, well, you described Anarchapulco as a circus. Like, are you sure you want to go? And I'm like, well, I think so, just because there's certain, it's kind of like a family reunion. There are certain people like Larkin and Amanda and Kat and stuff like that that I only see once a year in Acapulco at Anarchapulco, and that's the reason that I agreed to do it. But now it's kind of developed into where I'll also be selling, like I have an official vending booth with a friend of mine. I technically got my table for free just being me, but I also got it for free because I got him to buy 2 tables for himself, and I'm going to run all 3 of them. So I'm basically just going to be hustling the whole time and making money and seeing old friends and hanging out in Acapulco. I'm sure I'll feel better once I'm there, but like the countdown to getting there, it's been a little nerve-wracking just because I'm like, am I going to see government on the way? Am I going to have to deal with government once I'm there? Because all the cops knew me, but they all knew me as sad and scared with dreadlocks, whereas my new strategy is basically I'm just going to be friendly. So
Right.
like when cops notice me and are like, is that her? I'm just going to smile and wave at them. You
Act
know,
like you
like,
belong.
oh, I'm
Yep.
just a stupid fucking tourist. Yeah.
Nice.
And hopefully that just gets them to leave me alone.
Right. Yeah, I've never been to Anarchapulco or Acapulco for that matter. Never really had any interest in going down there. I'm curious to hear what the circus aspect is. I'm sure it can be good from knowledge and meeting other anarchists and things like that, but I've also heard the criticisms a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's a circus in that, like, for every, like, one solid person that goes, there's, like, four. I hate to use the term idiot, but I can't think of any other term. They're just, like, the hashtag woke crowd, you know?
Sure.
I'm so fucking woke.
Yeah.
And that gets really old. And it's kind of a month-long party, like, from you know, when February starts till about like middle of March is just one long party and lots of bars, lots of drinking, lots of drugs, and it's really fun for a lot of people. And it's like it's great to, you know, be able to do that and not have to necessarily worry about the cops coming after you. But for somebody that's not really that into drugs or partying or alcohol, like it can be a little boring, you know, like you make a lot of connections, but a lot of those connections you make are really drunk when you're making them.
Right.
You know?
I'm familiar with that.
So I have the advantage that I'm going to be in the marketplace most of the time, and that's going to be more of like an agorist atmosphere. So I'm just going to be there hustling, they're talking there, and I'm also going to have a meetup. It's worth going to for like what we always said was to meet, you know, certain people and to hang out with certain people, and it's also worth it just for the city of Acapulco itself, because that whole area and just being in Mexico, especially when you're like stuck in the statist hell of the United States and you get to Mexico, like it is very motivating, inspiring, and freeing just to be in that environment. You know, like everybody's all excited because they can drink beers on the beach, or you can have a beer in Acapulco and just be walking down the main street in town, like with a bottle, like drinking, and nobody's gonna say a word to you. Like, that's just how it is. Whereas you can't do that in the US. You get drunk in public, you know, like.
Yeah, absolutely.
In Acapulco, like even simple things like being drunk outside and taking a pee against a tree, you get arrested for that in the United States. The other day, I saw some random guy's dick because he was outside of his truck peeing, and then he turns to see if anybody's looking, his whole body, and, you know, like.
Yeah.
And then he sees me and just looks embarrassed, and it's like, well,
yeah.
This is Mexico. Do what you want.
Yeah, and not to mention in the U.S., you take a piss on a tree on the side of a building or something, you get arrested and marked down as a sex offender too. So then you're fucked for the rest of your life as well.
Yeah, it's just being in that atmosphere where you can basically do whatever you want. Like people are just high off of that, and there really is like that's what makes Anarchapulco so addicting to so many people is, you know, it's not about the speeches. Like I'm not even that excited to give a speech, honestly. Like I kind of almost wish I didn't have to, because I'm not like I don't do that. Like shit, making the videos I make for Smart Cash are a little nerve-wracking, let alone going up in front of 1,000 people and talking to them. Like that's just not what I find exciting. But and like the speeches are all things that you can see on YouTube. So what you learn isn't necessarily what you learn sitting in the halls listening to the people talk. It's the conversations you have. It's the experiences you have outside of the venue. You know, it's learning that there is life beyond the United States. Most people like it. That's just they never experience anything different. That was the big thing that was refreshing for us when we got there. Was it was cool to talk to other people that thought the same way. You know, there were no statists in sight, and the people that were statists didn't speak English. So you kind of feel like you're on your own little planet. And then it was just being in a different atmosphere, being in a place where everything's so much cheaper. Like, I complain about how much the hotel for Anarchapulco costs, but it's like $100 or less for like a hotel room that would be like $300 to $400 a night in the United States.
Sure.
Like, technically not that bad.
Nice. Well, let's take the last few minutes of the show to talk about your business ventures and maybe what you're going to be selling at Anarchapulco, and anybody who's listening that's going to be there can hopefully check out your sweet wares, your sweet crocheting, and whatever else you're doing to get some cash flow in. Support this Agoras network.
Yeah, most of what I do is remote online work. It seems like now I'm about to, recently I've been podcast audio engineer for Vanu Podcast. That's
Nice.
been a new gig that I've been doing. And from that, I've been talking to Thaddeus because he needs help. So I'm about to start editing unregistered podcast, about to start doing social media management for Renegade University, so that's going to be a lot of fun. That'll start sometime in the next week or so. It like Dad just realized that he had a bunch of remote work that he needed help with, and he's like, wait, I'll have Lily do it.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that. I write. I write for Homestead Guru and now for Agora Nexus, I think is what it's called. I just did a podcast with them, and they approached me after and were like, do you want to write for money about agorism? And I was like, well, fuck yeah. So I do that now too. I basically do whatever. There's like, if people want to hire me for anything from transcription to writing to podcast editing or even stuff that I might not have experience with, they can contact me on my website at highlyfunctionalgrowth.com. There's a hire me tab. And you can just fill out the form and get in touch with me that way. But at Anarchapulco, at this point, I have hats made, making these things, which will be useful. They're like water bottle holders.
Oh, hell yeah.
So, like, you put your water bottle in it, and you can basically wear it as a purse instead of carrying around, which that's one thing I noticed is people are always carrying water bottles around. And I have hats, and I've just been making whatever I can with the store of yarn that I got donated from a friend of mine.
Nice.
And I'm going to have a table with that. I'll have dream catchers. And I'll also be selling, my friend has been collecting silver from Taxco, Mexico, which is like the silver capital of Mexico, like silver jewelry. So I'll be selling 100% Mexican produced silver jewelry as well as Mexican full spectrum CBD oil.
Sick.
I will most likely be producing like candies and cookies and stuff with the CBD products in it to sell as well, because people love stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even my dab suckers and stuff that people are used to, but that's all in how determined I want to be to go and find myself a bulk amount of weed and produce dabs.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm just going to be selling pretty much anything. Maybe some carnivore lotions. I might produce some beef tallow lotions to sell to people, and basically whatever I can produce for February.
I bet those smell delicious too.
I mean, I always find it funny because like they do smell good, especially if you add like essential oils, but it kind of, it still has a steaky smell. So it smells like steak plus lavender or a steak plus mint, which
that's what I was thinking about.
But it's the best lotion I know of.
The steak smell. I wouldn't want any additives. I just want to smell like steak. That sounds great. But I saw your little lighter holders that look like mushrooms. Those were sweet. Are you gonna have those there?
Yeah. I'm gonna have a bunch of those. I have like 30 of them made already. I'm just gonna keep producing them because I know those. Because like those are more than just lighter holders. I was thinking about it. Like you could put your baggies of drugs in there. You could put chapstick in there for kids. Like money. You could put all sorts of little things in those things. Like they're surprisingly versatile. I've tried a couple little things. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna sell these as all-purpose holders.
Beautiful.
And I'll sell some of them. I'll just like go to the OXXO and buy a bunch of lighters and just sell them with the lighters in them and just be like, look, you got a lighter and a holder.
Perfect.
So,
yeah, you could put your magic mushrooms in your mushroom holder. It's on theme. I love it. That's freaking sweet. All right. Well, let's call that a really good show. Another really good show that you've come on, and go ahead and tell them your website and whatnot one more time before we close out.
It's highlyfunctionalgrowth.com. It's also easy to contact me on Facebook. I'm fairly active there, just Lily Forrester, and I pretty much always respond to, everything from, I have people that are buying I've had a couple people buy some of the things that I've been making for crochet from afar, and I'm just going to have my friends smuggle it. So if you want me to make you something, I can do that. You'll just have to wait like a few months for my friend to go back to the United States so he can ship it to you and not have it cost, $25 for shipping alone.
For sure. Excellent. Yes, I'll link all that stuff in the description so anybody interested can check out your work. Thanks again for coming on. It's always a pleasure. Looking forward to the next time already. And let's stick around and do the Patreon after hours real quick. I hope you were thinking about that question so I don't just spring it on you.
Okay.
But all right, everybody, thanks for watching. Remember, total freedom, no exceptions.